सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So the fourth chapter begins with the narration of the Jnana Parampara, the Guru Shishya Parampara. So Bhagavan says, Arjuna, this great spiritual knowledge has come from me. In the beginning of the creation, I myself had given this to Surya Devata, Vivaswan. Vivaswan Manave Praha. Surya Bhagavan gave it to his son Manu. And then Manu handed over this knowledge to Ikshvaku. So this way, this Jnana Parampara has been flowing for a long time. All the great kings, they lived their life based on this knowledge. It was because of this knowledge that they gained strength, power, confidence, clarity in ruling the kingdom. But unfortunately, this flow of knowledge got obstructed because of some reason. So therefore, today this knowledge is not available to you. So therefore, in order to revive this knowledge, I am now giving you the same knowledge which I had given to Surya Bhagavan. Why am I giving this knowledge to you? I am giving this knowledge to you because I love you. You are my devotee. You are my friend. So therefore, this greatest knowledge, which is the greatest secret, I am handing over to you. So when Bhagavan said this much, Arjuna had a question. What was the question? Let us chant verse number 4. Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvatah kathametat vijaniyam tvamadau proktavanite. Yes. So now Arjuna raises a question. What does Arjuna say? Bhagavan, bhavatah janmah aparam. Bhagavan, you said you gave this knowledge to Surya Bhagavan. But as far as I know, you were born later. Even before your birth, Surya Bhagavan was already there. Because as far as I know, we are contemporaries. Our age is similar. So it is said that Arjuna and Bhagavan Sri Krishna, they were almost 60 years when this war took place. That was their age. That was the age when you are young in those times. So they were around 60 years and their age was almost similar. So now Arjuna is confused. Here Bhagavan is saying, I gave this knowledge to Surya Bhagavan. Even before the creation itself, Surya Bhagavan was there. And as far as I know, this Krishna form, he was born somewhere around 60 years back. Now this is the question. Bhavatah janma aparam. Bhagavan, you were born later. Param janma vivaswatah. Whereas Surya Bhagavan was there even before your birth. So therefore, katham etad vijaniyam. How am I to understand that tvam adau proktavan iti, that you gave this knowledge to Surya Bhagavan? How am I to understand? I hope the question is clear. The question is, how can you give this knowledge to Surya Bhagavan? Surya Bhagavan was already there, shining brilliantly even before the creation. How am I to understand this? Now, in Hindu philosophy, a student has the right to ask any kind of question to the teacher. This total freedom is given only in Hindu philosophy. It is not that thou shalt obey. No, you have all the right to ask any kind of question to your spiritual teacher. That freedom is exercised by Arjuna here. That means this conversation was a healthy conversation. It is not that some ideas are superimposed on the disciple and then he has to obey without questioning. No. So if you see the entire Bhagavad Gita, you will find Arjuna, whenever he had some question, he used to raise it. Now, this discussion between Bhagavan and Arjuna, it is called a samvada. There are different kinds of discussions mentioned in Hindu philosophy. What are they? Number one, it is called vada. What is vada? Two people discuss. They are discussing on a particular topic because there is a difference of opinion. And the goal of discussion is knowledge. So if the person with whom I am discussing, if he has a better point, the right point, then I am able to accept his point. If I am giving some right point, then he has to accept my point. Meaning, the discussion is not an argument, it is for gaining knowledge. So whenever discussions happen for gaining knowledge, it is called vadaha. Sometimes discussion end up in argument. Argument means what? I am not interested in gaining knowledge, I am interested in winning the argument. Then that discussion is called a jalpaha. So what is the goal? Goal is not to gain knowledge, goal is to defeat the opponent. In that case, the discussion is called jalpa. So in jalpa what happens? I try to argue that I alone am right and that you are wrong. This is called jalpa. Now the third one is called vitandavada. What is vitandavada? Here the only goal is to prove that the other person is wrong. What is right, I am not interested. I don't have my own standpoint. The best example is the politicians. Whatever the ruling party does, oppose it. But what is your stand? I don't have any stand. My only stand is that other person is wrong. Whatever he does, argue and prove that the other person is wrong. Now this is called vitandavada. Now what we are having here is neither vada, nor jalpa, nor vitandavada. What we are having is samvada. What is samvada? In samvada, there is an enlightened master and there is a disciple who is eager to learn. So what is the attitude? The disciple has the right to question, but he is questioning not to test the teacher. He is questioning not because he has doubt in the teacher. He is questioning not to criticize the teacher. He is questioning only to learn. And if the teacher explains and if the student is not able to understand, he will not blame the teacher. He will say, if I am not understanding, it is because of my inherent defects. Maybe I am not qualified to gain this knowledge, therefore I am not able to understand. He will never blame the teacher. This healthy relationship, when we have, then that discussion is called samvadaha. So what is happening in Bhagavad Gita? That is why in the end of the chapter you will have Sri Krishnarjuna Samvade. It is a samvada. So now Arjuna is asking the question. What is the question? Bhagwan, I have no doubt in your statement. Whatever you are saying, it has to be 100% true. But I have this doubt. The doubt is, what is the doubt? How is it that you gave this knowledge to Surya Bhagwan? So now what does Bhagwan answer? Let us read 5, 6, 7, 8. So Bhagwan gives the Avatara Rahasya in these verses. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Bahuni me vyatitani Janmani tavacharjuna Tanyaham veda sarvani Natvam vetha parantapa Ajopi sannavyayatma Bhutanamishwaropi san Prakritim swamadhisthaya Sambhavamyatma mayaya Yada yada hi dharmasya Glanirbhavati bharata Abhyuttanamadharmasya Tadatmanam srajamyaham Paritranaya sadhunam Vinashaya cha dushkritam Dharma samsthapanarthaya Sambhavami yuge yuge. Yes. So what does Bhagwan say? Arjuna, Bahuni me janmani vyatitani. Arjuna, this is not my first birth. Or this is not my only birth. I have been born very many times. Not only me, but you also. Tavacha Arjuna. Arjuna, all of us, we have been born very many times into this world. But the only difference between me and you is Aham tani sarvani veda. I know everything. Natvam vetha parantapa. But you don't know. That's the only difference. I have taken very many avatars. Innumerable number of avatars I have taken. This is one among the many. Meaning, in the beginning of the creation itself, I was there. But what is the difference? You have also taken very many births, but you don't know, I know. Taniyaham sarvani veda means I know everything about my birth and I know everything about everybody else's birth also. The past, the present, the future of all the beings, I know. You don't know. Then let us first see the meaning. What is the speciality of my birth? Ajaha api san avyayatma, though I am ajaha, unborn. Though I am avyayatma, imperishable, changeless, free from birth and death, even though I am like this. Bhutanam Ishwaropi san, though I am the Lord of the entire universe, I am the Lord of all beings. Even then, I do take birth. Sambhavami. I do come into existence. How? Prakritim swam adhishtaya, keeping the prakriti under my control, keeping the matter envelopments under the control, ruling over them, subjugating over them, and I take birth? Sambhavami Atma Maya, out of my own power of Maya. Bhagavan, why do you take birth? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanihi bhavati. Whenever there is a decline, glani of dharma. Dharma means cosmic orderliness, cosmic harmony. Whenever there is a decline in the cosmic orderliness, and whenever there is an ascendance of adharma, then I srijamyaham, I create myself. Then what do? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come again and again in every yuga, any number of times. What is the main purpose? Dharma samsthapanarthaya, for establishing dharma, for restoring dharma. How do you do it? There are two ways. What are the ways? Paritranaya sadhunam, by protecting the people who are dharmic, and then vinashaya cha dushkritam, by destroying people who are adharmic, wicked. This is how I restore dharma. This is the literal meaning. Right? Now let us enter into a little detail. So what does Bhagavan say here? Arjuna, you have also taken many births. I have also taken many births. But my birth is called avatar. Your birth is mere birth. So what is the difference? Even when I take avatar, my sarvajñatvam doesn't get, veiled, covered. I still remain sarvajña. Sarvajña means omniscient, all-knowing. So what is the difference between Bhagavan and jivas like us? So a very beautiful example is given. Suppose there is a huge wall, thick wall, right? And suppose there is a hole in that wall. So if you peep through the hole, you see something of the other side, correct? You see little of something of the other side. But suppose there is a person who is seated on the wall, on the top of the wall. What will be his vision? He will be seeing everything. What will the vision of the person who is seeing through the hole? His vision will be limited, isn't it? This is the difference. We jivas, we have no knowledge about what our previous birth was, how we were, we don't know anything. Our knowledge is alpa. Whereas Bhagavan knows everything about everyone. Now let us see the major difference between Janma of Jiva and Avatara of Ishvara. What are the main differences? Difference number one, difference with respect to cause. Karana Bheda. This is the first one. What is that which causes our birth and what is that which causes Bhagavan's descendants? Our birth is based on ignorance. What is the cause? Ignorance is the cause. We don't know who we are, so therefore we are born. Avidya is the cause. The cause of our birth is avidya. Avidya, ignorance about what? Ignorance about our own true nature. As long as we don't know who we are, the rebirth process will continue. The birth in which we come to know who we are, our own true self, that birth we will attain liberation. So what is the cause of our birth into this world? Ignorance about one's own true nature. So this is the cause of our birth. So we can say we fall into the world. We have no choice. As long as the self-knowledge is not gained, we have to be born again and again. There is no choice. But what is the cause of avatar of Bhagavan? It is not because of ignorance, it is because of knowledge. We can say it is out of compassion. What is the cause? It is compassion which forces Bhagavan to take avatar. Compassion for the suffering humanity. So what is the difference? The difference is Jiva helplessly falls into the samsara. What about Bhagavan? Bhagavan's avatar is conscious, deliberate descendance. It is not fall, it is descendance. He is descending. Just like there is a big difference between falling into a well and getting down into the well. There is a big difference. Isn't it? Falling is not getting down. When you get down, it's a conscious effort. This is Karana Bheda, difference with respect to the cause. The second one is called Swarupa Bheda. Once after being born, what is the nature of the Jiva and what is the nature of Ishvara? It is called a Swarupa Bheda, difference in nature. So what is the nature of Jiva who is born? He always remain Alpatnyaha. He always remain Alpa Shaktiman. Alpatnyaha means what? Who knows very little. His knowledge is limited. Alpa Shaktiman means his strength, his abilities, his capacities are also limited. What about Bhagavan? He is not Alpatnya. Even when he takes avatar, he remains Sarvatnyaha, all-knowing. Even when he takes avatar, he remains Sarva Shaktiman, all-powerful, omnipotent. What is the nature of Jiva? Jiva is filled with likes and dislikes, ragadveshas. He is filled with weaknesses. All kinds of defects are present in this Jiva. Right? He ever remains a Maya Dasaha, a slave of Maya, a slave of Prakriti. What about Bhagavan? Bhagavan is not Maya Dasa, he is Maya Pati. So what he said here, Prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. My Maya is under my control. I dictate terms to my Prakriti, my Maya. She dances according to my tune. I decide the shots. What about the Jiva? Jiva is Maya Dasa. He is totally helpless. Which body he is going to be born? He has no choice. Which environment he is going to be born? He has no choice. Which world he is going to be born? He has no choice. With what all abilities, capacities, potentials, talents he is going to be born? He has no choice. He may be born in a human body, in an animal body, in a plant's body. Isn't it? Look at the helplessness. What about Bhagavan? Bhagavan is not helpless. He chooses which body to take. According to the occasion, he takes. That point will come later. So this is a difference between Jiva and Ishvara. This is a difference with respect to the nature, Swarupa. One is Maya Dasa, the other is Maya Pati. Puja Gurudev used to give a beautiful anecdote with respect to this. So there was a father. He was taking his son. They were walking along the road. So then the son saw that one person, he was chained, and two policemen, they were carrying him, taking him somewhere. So then the son asked, Father, who is this? So father said, he's a thief. Two policemen, they were taking this person. He's a thief. Okay, he understood. After some time, they saw another person. He was taken by 4 policemen. So again the son asked, Father, who is this? So father said, he's a bigger thief. Well, 4 policemen are there around him. After some time, they saw a crowd. One person was in the center. And there were so many policemen around, army people, policemen, etc. So then the son said, Father, look, the greatest thief is going. Father said, he is not the greatest thief, he is the President of India. Fool, keep quiet. Right? So President of India will always be surrounded by policemen and armed forces. So the son said, see, greatest thief is going. So what is the difference? When a thief goes, he is controlled by the police. What about the president? He controls the police. There is a big difference. In the same way, Bhagavan also comes just like us with a human body. What is the difference? The body, mind, intellect, etc. is not in our control. It is not in the control of Jiva. But what about Bhagavan? Bhagavan controls his Maya. This is the difference. So this is difference with respect to the nature. What was the first one? Difference with respect to cause. So Karana Bheda, Swarupa Bheda. Third one is Uddeshya Bheda. Difference with respect to purpose. What is the purpose for which the Jivas are born? And what is the purpose for which Bhagavan is born? What is the difference? That is called as Uddeshya Bheda or Karya Bheda, difference in purpose. So what is the purpose of Jiva being born into this world? One purpose is in order to fulfill the unfulfilled desires which the Jiva had in its past birth. This is one purpose. So in the past birth, he had some desires. He wanted to fulfill those desires, but before fulfilling those desires, he died. So what will be the next birth? Next birth will be in order to fulfill those unfulfilled desires. This is one reason. The second reason is in order to exhaust his prarabdha karmas. What does it mean? Whatever actions we do in life, every action produces results. Karma phala. Every karma produces karma phala. So this cycle of karma is completed only when the karta goes through the karma phala. Then that cycle is completed. So I perform certain actions. Those actions give certain results. When I go through those results, the karma phala bhoga can be in the form of sukha or dukkha. If the karma is good, then I enjoy sukha. If the karma is bad, then I suffer dukkha. So the result of karma is sukha, dukkha. Sometimes mixed also. So according to the karma done by the jiva, karma phalas are produced, and when those karma phalas are gone through, enjoyed or suffered, then that cycle gets completed. So now, we jivas, we perform so many karmas. We have already performed so many karmas in the infinite number of births which we have already gone through. So all the karmas, they remain as sanchita karma. It is stored. Because every karma will not fructify in the same birth. Karma has to give karma phala. There are some karmas which give result in the same birth. There are some karmas which has to wait. It is something like sprouting of the seed. Every seed will not sprout on the same time. Some seeds sprout overnight. Some seeds sprout maybe after a few years. So in the same way, karmas also. So whatever karmas we have done, everything is stored, and that stored karma is called sanchita karma. A part of the sanchita karma becomes ready for fruition, ready for fructification, ready to give result. So that part of karma is called prarabdha karma. So then, according to the prarabdha karma, the jiva is given a particular body. It need not be human body, it can be any body. It can be a bird's body, insect's body, plant's body, animal's body. It all depends on what kind of karma has been, what kind of karma is ready to give the result. So this prarabdha karma decides what kind of womb we are going to be born. And once we are born, we have to go through the prarabdha karma. So this is the second reason why we are born. The purpose is to exhaust prarabdha karma. The third reason why we are born is in order to evolve. So what is the purpose of the entire this punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam process? What is the purpose? The purpose is evolution. The purpose is to gain knowledge. This cycle will continue. How long will it continue? Till I come to know my true nature, this will continue. So what is happening through this is, we are slowly being evolved. We become mature, we become evolved. So the process of gaining knowledge is what happens through this Janma Marana Chakra. Now the question is, this is with regard to Jivas. What about Ishvara? Is there any unfulfilled desire because of which he has to come and take birth? The purpose of all desire is only one thing, happiness, isn't it? Why do we have desires? The purpose of desire is that if I fulfill this particular desire, I will be happy. So ultimate goal is happiness. Who is Bhagavan? He is Satchit Ananda Surupa. He is Ananda Surupa. He is infinite bliss. So naturally he cannot have any kind of desires. So therefore he doesn't take birth because he has some unfulfilled desire. No. There are no desires in Bhagavan. Then, is he coming to take what you call exhaust prarabdha karmas? Bhagavan has no such karmas. He is untouched by karmas. How is untouched? We will see later. That's the main topic of this chapter. Then the third reason is to evolve. Bhagavan is evolution incarnate. The highest, the best, the most evolved. So then what is the purpose of Bhagavan's taking avatar? So that purpose is given here. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam madharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham. So the purpose of Bhagavan's avatar is only one. What is that? Dharma samsthapana. To establish cosmic orderliness. This is the main purpose. There are many other purposes also for which he can come. What is the other purpose? It is possible that a particular devotee has asked, prayed for Bhagavan. For example, like Dasharath Maharaj and Kausalya Mata. They did lot of tapas. And then when Bhagavan came, what did they ask? They asked, Bhagavan, you should be born as my son. This was the reason. No, poor Bhagavan. He has no other option. He has to take avatar. Isn't it? Devaki Mata and Vasudeva, they also did the same thing. And therefore Bhagavan was born. There are all reasons. There are very many reasons. Another reason why Bhagavan takes avatar is to do so many leelas, so that devotees can remember these leelas and thus develop a love relationship with Bhagavan. This is another reason. But the main reason is this. What is the main reason? Dharma samsthapana. This is the main reason. So now, as we had said earlier, Bhagavan is not bound by any way through Prakriti. As far as a jiva is concerned, he has no choice. Which body he is going to be born, there is no choice. But what about Bhagavan? He has full freedom. He may be born through a father and mother, he may not be born through a father and mother. How was Narasimha born? Who is the father and mother of Narasimha? Now this is called total freedom. According to situation, what does the situation demand, accordingly he will take avatar. So even when he is born, he is very clear what is the purpose, what is it for which I am born, how long I am supposed to stay, what are the things to be done, how it has to be done, when it has to be done, everything is very clear for Bhagavan. And what is the kind of body I have to take? Sometimes he takes Kurma avatar. Sometimes Varaha avatar, Matsya avatar, varieties of avatars he has taken. It's not necessary that he should come in a human form only. Look at the freedom. He is not bound by any way. So this is the difference in purpose. So what are the three main differences? Difference in cause, Karana Bheda, difference in nature, Sarupa Bheda, and difference in purpose, Uddeshya Bheda. Right. Now the next topic. What is the next topic? How many types of avatars are there? So in our scriptures, there are 5 types of avatars. What are the 5 types? Number 1, it is called Purna avatar. Number 2, it is called Amsha avatar or Kalavatar. Number 3, Avesha avatar. Number 4, what is number 4? Nitya avatar. Number 5, Archa avatar. These are the 5 types of avatars mentioned. So let us see one by one. What is the first one? Purna avatar. What is Purna avatar? In Purna avatar, Bhagavan is born just like any other human being. So there is a birth and Bhagavan grows up, and then there is education. He has to go to Gurukula, etc. He is taught, and then he gets married. He goes through the Grihastha-ashrama, and then he fulfills various kinds of responsibilities. Maybe it can be in the form of ruling the kingdom. Maybe it can be waging the war. Maybe it can be fulfilling the family responsibilities. Right? So Bhagavan lives just like any other human being. So what is the purpose of this kind of avatar? It is to show people how to live a fruitful, productive, creative life. How to live. So Bhagavan's life becomes a role model for others to emulate. To set a standard, Bhagavan takes such avatars. So such avatars are called Purna avatar. So what are the Purna avatars we have? Rama avatar and Krishna avatar, they are considered to be Purna avatars. Looking at their life, we learn how to live. They are called as Purna avatar. Purna avatar means all phases of a human being, it is depicted in their life. Therefore, it is Purna. The second one is called Amsha avatar or Kalavatar. Bhagavan has a particular purpose. For that particular purpose, he is born with that particular ability. Then that is called as Amsha or Kalavatar. For example, avatar of Vedavyasa Maharshi. It's considered to be Amsha avatar. So what is the purpose of Vedavyasji? Compiling the entire Vedas and making the Vedas available for the next generation. Mahabharata was composed by Vedavyasa Rishi. Srimad Bhagavatam was composed. Brahma Sutra was written by Vedavyasa Bhagavan. So what is the purpose? The purpose is to keep the knowledge intact. Bhagavan Shankaracharya is also considered to be avatar. There was such a big confusion with regard to the scriptures. The Vedic knowledge was misinterpreted by, it is said that almost 72 different schools of thoughts were there when Bhagavan Shankaracharya was born. And they were fighting among themselves. Proving that we are right, we are right. It was Bhagavan Shankaracharya who came, he defeated all the different schools of thought, and this Vedic knowledge was established as the highest and the supreme. This was done by Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. So what was his contribution? He wrote Bhashyas. Even today, the commentaries written by Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya is considered to be the best, the ultimate. It is considered to be the standard. He has written Bhashyas on Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra and Upanishads. So all the great Mahatmas, they refer to Shankara Bhashya when they expound the truths of the Vedic knowledge. So these are all Amsha avatars. For a particular purpose, Bhagavan taking avatar. Parashurama avatar was also Amsha avatar. It's called Amsha. So that is the Amsha avatar. What about the third one? What is the third? Forgot. Avesha avatar. What is Avesha avatar? That avatar is something which comes without any pre-planning. It just comes. A particular situation demanded, so it just comes. The best example is Narasimha avatar. What was the condition? It just happened. Hiranyakashipu asked Prahalada, where is your God? Prahalada said, he is everywhere. Is he there in this iron pillar? Yes, Father, he is there also. And then, what did Hiranyakashipu do? He just banged the pillar and then from there came Bhagavan. So this is called Avesha avatar. That particular situation demanded it. Bhagavan felt, my child, my devotee has said that I am in this, so naturally I should not make my devotee's word turn false. I should prove that my devotee's words is true. So in order to prove his devotee's word true, he came out. So this is called Avesha avatar. Right? What is the fourth one? Nityavatar. All the great saints and sages, through whom very many get inspired to walk the path of dharma, such great saints and sages are called Nityavatar. Why are they called Nityavatar? Nityavatar means all the time somebody or the other is always there. Any part of the world you go, in any religion you go, you will be having some avatar. Remember, avatar doesn't mean only Hindu saints. No. It can be in any religion. Anyone who has experienced the truth, anyone who is inspiring the masses to walk the path of truth, to walk the path of dharma, any such saint is an avatar of Bhagavan. They are called as Nitya avatar. And what is the last one? Archa avatar. Archa avatar means Bhagavan who comes in the form of idols in the temples. So in the temple also we have Bhagavan's murti, isn't it? Different temples have different murtis. All those murtis are considered to be avatars of Bhagavan only. We do the prana pratishtha of Bhagavan there in temple. In prana pratishtha, what is the meaning? Infusing life into that stone idol. That is called as prana pratishtha. So once prana pratishtha is done, you have to consider that idol to be a living presence of God. So therefore there is giving food, there is giving bath, etc. Just like we take care of ourselves, we have to take care of that God also. So it is considered that Bhagavan is listening to your prayers and that Bhagavan is capable of blessing also. What is the proof that Bhagavan is present in such temples? Look at the rush in those temples. That itself is the proof. Whether it is Kukke Subramanya or whether it is Mukambika or Dharmasthala or Guruvayur or Tirupati, look at the rush. That rush itself means what? They have prayed for something and that prayer has been answered. Just like that, nobody goes. Far, far away places they go just to pray. So Bhagavan's living presence is there in these temples. They are called as Archana means to worship. So Bhagavan's avatar is present in these temples also. So these are the 5 types of avatars. I hope you remember. First one, Purna, then Amsha-avatar, then Avesha-avatar, then Nitya-avatar, then Archa-avatar. Okay. Now the next topic. How will I know whether this person is an avatar or not? Right. Many people have this question. Because many times a disciple may say, my guru is an avatar of Bhagavan. The disciple has total faith. But now the question is, how can I verify whether a particular person is avatar or not? It is said that when Bhagavan Sri Krishna was there, majority of the people did not believe that he was an avatar. Only very, very rare few knew that he was an avatar. Most of the people thought he was an ordinary man. Maybe a little more intelligent. maybe a little tricky, very clever, smart, maybe little magic also he knew. That's how majority of the people treated him. Bhagavan himself says in Bhagavad Gita, avajananti mam mudhaha manushim tanumashritam. People ignore me, disregard me. They think I am an ordinary human being. Bhagavan himself laments. Right? Now the question is how to know whether a person is avatar or not. The answer is there is no way to know. It is impossible to know whether a particular person is an avatar or not. You can never know. You can only have faith. But the good news is you need not know. In order to gain liberation, you need not know whether a person is avatar or not. In fact, you need not have an avatar also. There is no need for an avatar in order to gain liberation. What is needed to gain liberation? What is needed is purity of mind. What is needed is spiritual knowledge. And spiritual knowledge has to be gained from a guru. This is all what is needed. An avatar is not needed for my liberation. In fact, if you are not prepared, even an avatar cannot liberate you. Right? Even if an avatar comes, he has no other way other than to teach. That is what is happening in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan was an avatar, but how did he remove the confusions of Arjuna? He did not do it by any kind of magic. What was he doing throughout Bhagavad Gita? It is only by giving spiritual knowledge. So let us keep this in mind. If my mind is unprepared, if I am not fit for knowledge, even avatar is helpless. But if I am fit, I need not have any kind of avatar. I don't need any avatar in order to gain liberation. But what if somebody is saying that his guru is an avatar? Yes, don't shake his faith. Let him have faith in his guru. It will do him good. So this topic is also over. Now, let us go a little detail into these two verses, very important verses, 7 and 8. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Let us go a little more in detail. So what does Bhagavan say? Whenever there is an ascent, an upsurge of adharma and decline of dharma, I create myself. Puja Gurudev used to say, this universe is not a chaos, it is a cosmos. Cosmos means what? The whole world is beautifully designed, beautifully planned, beautifully ruled, beautifully governed. It is totally under the control of an omniscient God. So whatever happens in this world is perfect. You cannot improve. Because it is under the direct control of omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God. That's why this universe is called cosmos. Now, when do we say that a particular system has been intelligently designed? When can we say that a particular system is intelligently designed? We can say a particular system is intelligently designed when that system is able to function smoothly in spite of the threats which can come from outside or from within. Are you able to understand? A system can be said to be intelligently designed when it has got its own intrinsic protective mechanism in order to handle the problems from within and without, inside or outside. If a system is able to handle all problems, and in spite of all problems, if it can function smoothly, we say that system is designed intelligently. Right? All the electrical and electronic devices. You see these devices. So what do the manufacturers do? The manufacturers, they think twice. What are the problems which this electronic device is going to face when it becomes operational? What are the problems? What are the possible problems it will have to encounter? So what do the manufacturers do? Keeping these problems in mind, they design the device in such a way that the device is able to function smoothly irrespective of problems from the outer world. To give a very simple example, voltage fluctuations happen, current fluctuations happen, so this will damage the device. So what do? They keep a fuse in the device, isn't it? So what happens whenever there is a fluctuation? The fuse is blown out, the device remains safe. Now this is called intelligent design. So the system is able to cope up with any kind of ups and downs, any kind of problem. If such a thing is there, then we say that system is intelligently designed. Right? Now, look at the creation of the Bhagavan. Look at this world created by Bhagavan. Don't you find that it is intelligently created? For that you have to be aware of little things of life. You have to be observant. How beautifully He has created things. Everything is in order. Take your own body. You are all seeing with your eyes. The eyes are sensitive device. What happens when a little dust enters into your eyes? What happens? Immediately the tears gush forth. Why do the tears gush forth? That dust can harm your eyes because eyes are very sensitive, very soft. It cannot handle this dust. So immediately a layer is formed by which the dust is flushed out of your eyes. Can you see intelligence there? Right. The body has this intrinsic protective mechanism to protect the body from any kind of harm. Observe little details in your own life. In your own body you see. So yada dust, tada what happens? Tears. This is the point. Tears just don't come. But whenever there is an emergency, there is this immunity system which is there to protect the body. Similarly, when something gets into the nose, there is sneezing. It happens automatically. You can't have any kind of control there. It just happens. Isn't it? Something gets into the throat, you cough. You eat something which the system is not able to digest. What happens? Lose motion. Yada indigestion, tada lose motion. Isn't it? This is called intelligent, mechanism. Whenever the child is born, now the child is not able to digest the food. The food which is available outside is gross. The child is not able to digest. So what does Mother Nature do? Immediately the breast of mother is filled with milk. See how beautifully little things are planned, designed, taken care. When you start analyzing these things, you start developing love for God. Bhagavan, how intelligent you are. How beautifully you have created this world. Right. So we were talking about Vyashti. Vyashti means at the individual level. This body is called Vyashti. The same thing is applicable for Samashti also. Totality also. Whatever happens in microcosm, the same thing has to happen in macrocosm. Just like I identify myself with this body, in the same way Bhagavan identifies with the totality of the universe. I identified with this body is me. Right? The very same consciousness identified with the total world is Ishvara, God. Just like anything happening in this body, I am aware. There is some pain in the leg, or the eyes, or the ears, or the nose, or the hands. Wherever there is pain, immediately I become aware, isn't it? I know. In the same way, whenever there is dharmasya glani, whenever the orderliness of the cosmos, let us translate the dharma as cosmic orderliness, cosmic harmony, cosmic health. Whenever there is a disturbance at the cosmic level, what does Bhagavan say? Tada atmanam srijami. I step forward. I enter into the scene. So who is Bhagavan? He is that intelligent, intrinsic immunity system. He steps in. Are you able to follow what I am saying? Whenever the cosmic orderliness is under threat, Bhagavan steps in. And this stepping in of Bhagavan is called avatar. Right? Now the next question is, Bhagavan, how do you establish this orderliness? Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Fine. How do you establish this dharma? Now for that, we have to understand the meaning of dharma in a little more detail, in little more depth. So what is the definition of dharma according to Hindu philosophy? Dharma is defined as dharanat dharmaha or dharayati iti dharmaha. That which upholds, that which integrates, that which keeps things together. Whatever it is, that is called dharma. That which upholds, that which integrates, whatever it is, that is called dharma. So what is dharma? A simple translation is the eternal values of life. Because it is these eternal values which keep things together. It may be at the individual level, it may be at the family level, it may be at the organizational level, at the national level, or the cosmic level. What is it that which keeps things together? It is nothing but dharma. Let us first take it at the individual level. What is the translation of dharma? Eternal values of life. What are those eternal values? Whatever you expect others to do to you, they are all values. You expect others to be straightforward towards you. You expect others to be truthful towards you. You expect others to be loving towards you. Correct? You don't expect others to cheat you. So whatever you expect from others, they are all eternal values. Now let us see how this dharma integrates at different levels. First, let us take the individual case. How can dharma make me an integrated person? In every one of us, we have these two faculties. What are the faculties? One is called the mind, the other is called the intellect. Mind takes decision based on likes and dislikes. Intellect in me takes decision based on what is right and what is wrong. So whenever a situation comes in front of me, the mind says, I love this, let us do it. I don't like this, let us not do it. What does the intellect say? This is right, let us do. This is wrong, let us not do. Whom should we follow? We should follow the intellect, because intellect is showing the path of dharma. Right? Now, what happens to a person who listens always to his mind? What happens to such a person? If I like it, I will do. I don't bother whether it is right or wrong. What happens to such a person? Such a person becomes totally disintegrated within. Such a person becomes totally corrupt. Such a person becomes totally sensuous. Such a person becomes totally extroverted, selfish, narrow-minded. Look at the personality. What is happening to the personality? The personality becomes totally disintegrated. Such a person, whenever he faces any challenge in life, remember, every challenge you are going to face with your inner equipment, mind. Whenever a challenge comes, such a person who has never paid any attention to the values of life, such a person will disintegrate within. He can never face challenges of life. There will not be any kind of inner strength. There will not be any kind of confidence, courage. Why? Because he has always lived all those false values. He has trained his mind in all kinds of negativities, so the very same negative mind will misguide him. Can such a person attain success in life? Impossible. Can such a person ever attain peace in life? Impossible. Will such a person be loved by others? Impossible. Can such a person attain material prosperity? Impossible. Can such a person evolve spiritually? Impossible. Now what has happened? Total disintegration of the personality has happened. Why? He has not followed the path of dharma. What happens when you follow the path of dharma? You are listening to the wise sayings of your intellect. And the more and more you listen to your intellect, the more and more intellect becomes stronger, the mind becomes weaker. And a time comes when your mind and intellect becomes totally one. There is a total integration of the personality. Mind, intellect becoming one means what? Whatever is right, you love doing it. Whatever is wrong, you hate doing it. Then we say, such a person has attained an integrated personality. So what is the end result of integrated personality? He will have confidence. He will have willpower. He will have clarity in thinking. And wherever he goes, he will attain success. He will have tremendous amount of concentration. He will have tremendous amount of control over his mind. He will be materially prosperous. He will be spiritually, he will spiritually evolve also. Now see what is happening to the person when he follows the path of dharma. What is the definition of dharma? That which integrates, that which keeps you together, that which strengthens you, that which upholds you. Now this is with respect to an individual. Now just expand it to a family. Let us see whether dharma, following the path of dharma or following dharma, will it keep the family together? Yes. What are the main principles if the family members have to be together? The family members should love each other. There should be a spirit of sacrifice, isn't it? There should be a spirit of cooperation. There should not be any ego clash. Now these are all dharma. These are all dharmic values. They are all eternal values. So whichever family, the family members follow all these values, eternal values of life, such a family will have strong bonding. The members will have strong bonding towards each other. The members trust each other. They love each other. They help each other. They sacrifice for each other. Such a family will have strong bonding. But suppose what happens when family members don't have these values? The husband is doubting on the wife and wife is doubting the husband. What will happen? And both of them have no time for their children. What will happen to such a family? Will it remain? In the modern times, that is happening. Divorce rates are increasing. Why divorce rates are increasing? Wherever these values are not followed, that particular entity has to disintegrate. Wherever dharma is not followed, that entity has to disintegrate. Whether it is a person, or whether it is a family, or whether it is an organization, whether it is a team, whether it is a country, it can be anything. That which binds things together is dharma. Even notorious criminal gang, what is that binding force in them? They trust each other. They may be cheating the outer world, but as far as the members are concerned, they don't cheat each other, isn't it? So what is the binding force even in them? It is the practice of the eternal values. Yes or no? Yes. So this dharma, it is cosmic orderliness, no doubt. But what is it that which keeps the order of the cosmos intact? It is nothing but the eternal values of life. So how does Bhagavan set right this order of the cosmos? How does he bring back the balance of this cosmos? By encouraging, by propagating the dharmic values. If you can make these dharmic values strong at the grassroots level, then you will find every stage becomes strong. This is all what has to be done. Are you able to follow what I am saying? The cosmic harmony can be regained if dharma is given importance, if eternal values are given importance. Now the question is, how to do this dharma samsthapana? How to make these values strong in society? So what is the technique? There is only one technique. Those who are practicing these values, protect them, encourage them, strengthen them. And those who are not practicing these values, eliminate them. This is the only way. How can we do dharma samsthapana? Those who are practicing this dharma, please understand, many people, they wrongly translate this dharma as Hindu dharma. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati. Whenever the Hindu dharma falls, Bhagavan takes avatar in order to They are all misinterpretations. Please keep this in mind. Don't wrongly interpret the scriptures. All the violence that is happening in the society is because the scriptures are interpreted wrongly, whether it is Bible, Quran or Gita. When dharma is mentioned here, understand they are eternal values of life. It doesn't matter whether it is a Christian value, whether a Hindu value or Muslim value. There is no Hindu value and Muslim value. Honesty is honesty. Yes or no? These values don't have any kind of religion. It is beyond religion. Humility, compassion, forgiveness, they don't have any religion. So when we say dharma here, it represents eternal values of life. So what is the way in which these values can be strengthened in the society? The method is by protecting those people who are the upholders of these values, who are living these values. Meaning, protecting those who are dharmic. So that is the meaning, paritranaya sadhunam. Sadhu doesn't mean sannyasi. A person who has put on ochre cloth, he is a sadhu. No. Sadhu means the one who has a good heart. That's a translation. A good-hearted person is called a sadhu. So in this context, sadhu is a person who is practicing the noble values of life. Not mere preaching, but practicing. He is living it. He is living the eternal values of life. So what does Bhagavan do? In order to do the dharma samsthapana, he protects them. Paritranaya. And what about the adharmic people? Here it is written, Vinashaya cha dushkritam. Vinashaya means what? Destroying the evil people, the adharmic people. Now many people think destruction means killing. Please again understand, destruction can be of two types. A person is adharmic. How can I convert that adharmic person into a dharmic person? Give them these values. Tell him how important these values of life are. Convince him that if I am living these eternal values, I will be peaceful, others also will be peaceful. I am going to benefit, others are also going to benefit. If I live these eternal values, it is good for all. But if I am not going to live these values, I am going to suffer, I am going to create suffering for others. If you can convince a dharmic person that by living the adharmic values, you are going to put yourself in trouble, if you can convince him, naturally that person will correct himself. So once he has corrected himself, what have you done? Vinashaya cha dushkrita. So vinasha doesn't mean physically killing the person. The best way of vinasha is correcting the person by giving right understanding about life, by giving right knowledge. So it is possible that a person is a great sinner, but through right understanding, he can become a greatest saint also. There are very many people who have become like that. Best examples are Valmiki. He was a dacoit. But when that right understanding came to him, he became one of the greatest saints the world has ever known. Very many examples are there. So what is the best way of destroying adharma? The best way is by giving right teaching. So try out Sama, Dana, Veda, and when nothing works, then the final choiceless option is Danda, which is punishment. You have given the right knowledge also, but that person is not ready to listen. He is sticking to his own adharmic values. He is not ready to listen to everyone, and because of him, everybody is suffering. Then Bhagavan has no choice but to kill him. It is something like our own body. If suppose my hand has got some kind of wound, what will I first do? I will try to heal it, isn't it? By applying medicine. But suppose the wound is spreading and it is not responding to any medicine, what will I do then? A time comes when this hand becomes a threat to the whole body. Then what will I do? I will just amputate it, cut it off. Because by cutting it, the whole body can be saved. So this understanding has to be said. So when it is said Vinashaya dushkritam, it is not direct destruction, but opportunities are given for the adharmic people to improve, to correct themselves. And the best way to do that is by giving value-based teaching. Why should we value a value? Once I start valuing the value, then I will follow the value. Isn't it? More of it we will see tomorrow. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.